We have a big new update releasing into the beta app today, with over 24 new improvements, from things like selection, bulk creation, connection improvements. There's a lot in here to really speed up and improve your workflows, specifically in GearConnect draw mode. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So first up, we have completely redone selection. If I select something, now it's very obvious what I've selected. And you get a selection toolbar up at the top. This toolbar will show me common actions that I can quickly get to. So for gear, I can view the ports, relabel it, duplicate it, resize it, edit colors, lock, or remove. A lot of these were in the right-click menu already, but now the most common are accessible right away. And this will follow you around. So as I move around, it'll follow just kind of like you're used to with other selection. But if you go too far off, you'll see it actually will anchor to the top. But of course, it's not just gear that you can select. You can select gear groups now, you can select connections, and you can select text boxes. Text boxes already had a bit of this selection toolbar before, so now we've redesigned that, give it a bit of a facelift, and you can toggle between the text toolbar that we see here with familiar tools and the selection toolbar. Now when something is locked, it'll turn red, very clear that you can't move this, I can't interact with this, I can't edit it, etc. And the selection toolbar changes to just a lock, so it's much easier to quickly see. So you can, of course, unlock it just like you normally can. And this applies to everything else like gear groups, the whole thing turns red, same kind of idea. But of course, we didn't just redesign selection for the fun of it. This was specifically for multi-selection. If you're used to typical CAD programs, you're used to the crossing or strict selection. So we've brought that here as well. It's something that a lot of people have been asking for. It's very useful. When you go from left to right, you get a blue box and anything inside that is selected, pretty straightforward. But if you go from right to left, anything that is touching will be selected. So in this case, I'm just touching these few items and they will be selected. You can see I've selected the gear group, I've selected this connection, and I've selected here. But of course you can use Shift and select more things or remove things from your selection. And you can see that the multi-selection bar will highlight with your selection. So it's very easy to see what you have selected. So when I have just gear selected, I have slightly different options than if I add in connections as well. And you'll get that drop down to indicate that you have multiple different types. If I add in gear groups and text boxes, you'll see I start to get a few more options as well. You'll see at the bottom, I have a summary bar of everything that I have selected. So you'll see totals and then how many individual types of devices or gear items that I have. So 2 gear, 2 connections, and 1 gear group, for example. If I wanted to operate on just a subset of this selection, I can select gear. And now you can see the rectangle turns orange and the individual items turn orange to indicate that I'm just operating on a subset of my selections. Likewise for connections and the gear group itself. And of course, this works for text boxes too. But you can also go in and change it from the drop down as well. So you have the flexibility to do it from the toolbar or from the summary bar at the bottom. The great thing about the selection toolbar is everything you see in here can apply to bulk. So you can bulk edit labels, you can bulk edit colors, bulk edit opacities, bulk lock things. So it makes it obviously much faster to do all this. This allows you to very quickly number things visually on the drawing. And so you can label connections, you can auto label gear groups, anything that you can select, you can relabel. And so let's say I select these in this order here, and I go to edit labels. Let's say I want these just to actually start at 11. And as you can see, I have all sorts of options from left to right, top to bottom, pretty standard stuff. But selection order, that will follow when you do shift select. You can see it now auto numbers them accordingly. If I wanted to keep the node, then I can do that as well. I can say node, selection order, start at 11, then node 11, 12, 13, etc. Pretty straightforward, but a much faster way. But of course, this doesn't just work on gear, this works on everything else that you can select. So if I wanted to auto label these two, I can do the same thing, edit labels, and I'll do top to bottom in this case. And you can see I get some labels. But just like I can do bulk labels, I can do bulk anything else as well in that selection toolbar. So let's say I wanted to change all the colors in here. I can change that to orange, let's say, and now everything inside this is orange. But if I have, for example, these different types of connections, if I wanted to filter it to just connections, I now get the connection colors on its own. So if I wanted to use the layer colors, you can see it changes to this black color that they're on. But if I wanted to instead use the port colors, you can see that individually this will change back to the purple that it was, and this will change back to the blue that it was. And likewise, you can now change multiple items, what layer they're on all at once. Same kind of idea, you select, and then you can see here we actually have a mixed selection of layers because some of them are on LX and some of them are on the network. But if we all wanted to change them to the LX layer, or if we all wanted to change them to network, you can see their colors will reflect that because some of them are set to use the layer color as well. So it's a much faster way to be able to quickly swap layers. And it's important to note that when you're filtering using this selection bar at the bottom or this toolbar, that only applies to bulk actions that you do within the selection toolbar. If you do anything from this toolbar, or if you do anything from the edit menu, it'll apply to the entire selection. So just keep that in mind when you're working between the two of them. And most of the items in the selection toolbar also has keyboard shortcuts associated to it, and we've updated many of them to work with bulk selection as well. So you can always find keyboard shortcuts from help keyboard shortcuts to get a full list of everything that you can do from the keyboard. So one of the most useful features of multi-select and all these bulk actions is bulk duplicate, of course. This is something that a lot of people have been really asking for, as this will drastically speed up a lot of the repetitive work in the drawings that up till now GearConnect wasn't fantastic at dealing with. And so you can see here, I have a main and a backup, very simple example. And so this is now trivial to do. So if I wanted to go in and I wanted to select, say, my setup, I can now hit duplicate, and it'll duplicate everything, including its connections. And so as you can see, this is a much faster way to get going. And then you can, of course, go ahead and tweak this as you see fit. If I don't want these text boxes, I can remove those. If I want to change these to a different color, I can do that, and so on and so forth. And of course, you can select anything and move it, because you can filter selections. If you only wanted to duplicate certain things, let's say, get rid of that connection there. Let's say we only wanted to duplicate the gear. We can go in and you can see it's only duplicated the gear. As you're used to in other drawing applications and CAD software, typical alignment features to be able to quickly align things. We do have the snap groups, as you can see already, but sometimes that's still a little bit to actually get things how you want. So now when you have at least 2 or more things selected, you can enable the align items. It's also available here as well, but you can access this and you have your pretty typical things. So I can say align this middle, but you can also distribute them, which is quite a bit more useful. And so if I wanted to distribute these horizontally, you can now see they're evenly spaced. And as you can see, I can control the spacing. So by default, we set it to 80, but of course I can change that if I want. I can also do vertical spacing, but then one of the more useful ones is this auto grid. So what auto grid will do will automatically determine all the different items that you've selected and try and fit them into a square. So this one's pretty easy. It's just a 2x2, so it fits into a square very nicely. But if you have something that's a little bit more awkward, let's say these guys here, and I only want the 8 gear that we've selected, we're going to align them. And we're going to give 80 again and auto grid. And you can see this tries to fit it into a square as well. So this will be 3x3. That's what it's trying to do, but obviously we're 1 short. So this is really built for people that have been asking a lot for like LED tile placements to really speed up that workflow. But of course, you can also go in and customize the columns as well. So let's say we go back to our gear selection here. And let's say I wanted 4. So now I have a set of 4x2. But you can also do whatever you want and it'll try and adjust and accommodate as much as possible. So this update also brings a bunch of other features as well, not just the multi-selection. So one of the big new additions is we will now automatically tell you what is compatible as you're drawing connections. And so GearConnect would do this before. You would make a connection, but if you could say connected an RJ45 to a USB, say in this case, it would reject that because that's not possible. But you always had to make that connection and then it would reject it. So now it will actually highlight right away. So if I click and drag, you can see all of the incompatible ports automatically fade out so that I can't select it, and they no longer snap. So you can see it's very obvious what is and isn't connectable. And so you just get the selection. So I can't connect these to the SFPs, I can't connect them to the USBs, etc., etc. Or that's kind of what you're used to. Once you reconnect it, it allows the connection. And because we know what all these ports are allowed to connect to, and we have that real-time validation, you get that feedback right away. But one of the big features we wanted to add to help address a lot of the tediousness in drawing connections is bulk creation of connections. And so now there's a few different ways to access it, but the easiest way is that if you draw a connection and if you hold Control as you make the connection, you'll now get a bulk create connection, and it'll automatically, again, using that same validation, figure out all the different compatible ports. And so you have two options here. You can say how many of those. So by default, it'll just find all the ports it can. And if you say yes, it'll just connect everything. But sometimes you may only want to have things on the same side. So in this case, you can see this front of house switch has ports on both sides of the device, but I don't want ports coming or connections coming from one side to the other. So I'm just going to say same side only. And it'll go ahead and it'll just connect the rest of them. If I wanted all of them, I'll show you what that looks like as well. You can select another way to do it. You can select a connection and say bulk create connections. And if I don't check that and I just say yes, you can see it's now connected everything it possibly can to the other side. So you have control over that. And of course, if I only wanted a small subset of that, let's say I only wanted 2, I can only add those 2. So it makes it very easy to be able to quickly wire up your drawings. And because this knows that these are all compatible, it'll only pick compatible ports. And so, for example, this RJ45, if I connect this up and allow it to do everything, you can see it didn't go to the EtherCon because the EtherCon, while compatible, it's not the exact same connection that you've made, but you can then do an EtherCon to an EtherCon, and it'll do the same thing and connect them all up. But likewise, if I do an EtherCon to an RJ45, it'll then make the connections between all the EtherCon on the source and RJ45 on the target. So you have a lot of control over how that's going to work. So likewise, we've also made quite a few changes to how you actually draw connection nodes, how you position them when you're drawing. So as you know, GearConnect will automatically route around other gear as you move things around. Most people just leave this as is, but a lot of people like to customize. So before, if you hovered over this, you could affect it and draw it and customize it how you want. And that posed a couple of issues. People would mutate their connections when they weren't expecting. You might be panning and you might accidentally mess it up and it's not really what you wanted. There is now a new node edit mode. And in this mode, you can see I can't select anything in the drawing anymore when I click, but when I hover over, I can now draw nodes. So you can see my cursor changes to signify, and I can draw just like I could before. You draw whatever you want. We have made some performance improvements to this behind the scenes to make this perform a little bit more smart, but it's very similar to what you're used to before. Likewise, this affects all nodes and all connections. So if I have, say, multiple connections here, I can go in and I can customize all of these if I want. But let's say I'm just working on this one in particular and I just want to edit this one. I can just go in and say edit nodes for this particular one. I can immediately see all these nodes without having to hover over them, which is pretty nice. And then of course you can customize them as you see fit. And it does not work for the other ones as well. So I can't click on any of those to control them. I can only click on them to be able to change them or to select them. And just like you had before with remove all nodes from the right click menu, you now have that in multi-select as well. So I can select everything here and you can see there is a new remove all nodes option and it will just immediately reset everything back to the defaults without any of your customization. We've also added a new selection export mode as well. So typically when you would export, print, or any of these options, it would just do the entire drawing, which is fine for most cases. But sometimes if on these bigger drawings, you only want to export part of it. Let's say I only want to export front of house. So now with that selection, just like I have before, if I do any of these options, let's say I do print, I get a new option, selected items only, or the entire drawing. And if I say selected items only, now it only will do the selected items. So there's a lot of improvements and bug fixes that we didn't talk about today in this video. So I'd encourage you to go check out the changelog for all the other things in there. There might be something that you've been really looking forward to that we just didn't talk about. We hope you find this update useful and it makes drawing with GearConnect even faster and more productive. Thank you to everyone for your feedback. We have a really exciting year ahead and we're really excited to deliver on a lot of the big requests that people are asking for. So thank you again, and we hope you enjoy this update.